For those of you that are just joining us, for about a month now, we've been in this series through the book of John. And I think it appropriate today, in God's timing, that as we're going to do communion today, that we hit the verses that are the most known in the scripture, right? I did this last Sunday as we were talking about Nicodemus and how here's this religious leader who his life is centered around studying the word of God. I want you to get this word. Lean in on this. Ready? He's centered around studying God's word. And yet when God's son is in front of him, he can't recognize him. Because the study of God's word isn't what brings you into your right standing with God. It's recognizing what his son is and who his son is and what he has done for you that gives you salvation. And Nicodemus is sitting there, and Jesus even makes a statement. He's like, this is what you do. I mean, you're a religious leader. You study. This is what you do. And if you can't understand earthly things, how in the world are you ever going to receive spiritual things? And we talked last week about the difference in approaching God logically as opposed to spiritually. And I want you to understand this, that you and I, even the smartest in the room, and some of you are genius level. I do not qualify in that category. But some of you are very, very deep in the way you think and the way you receive. But even at our best of understanding of God, we fall short of his glory. How many of you know the verse, right? It says that our righteousness is as what? Filthy rags. That the wages of our sin is death. So last week we talked about, hey, how should you take an attitude? What questions should you ask when going into God's word? And you can go back and review that. I'm not going to make you do that today. But today we're going to pick up in this conversation where the most famous verse that's known even by unbelievers today, that is seen at more sporting events than anything, that is advertised on more billboards across the globe. It is John 3:16. Matter of fact, I know it from the King James Version. That's my memory of it. How many of you are the same? All right. Would you quote it with me? And let's go old school. Ready? Right? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Isn't that a good verse? I mean, there's so much packed into that verse. I mean, I like it, and I've got it underlined. I digitally do my Bible sometimes, and I tell people I underline. They're like, "How do you do it?" I screenshot, and then I write notes, and I put things in there. But I underline two words in there. Not just that he loved. There's another thing that I think we miss in love a lot. God so loved the world that, what's the next two words? He gave. All right, can I tell you this? It is not love unless something is being given, unless action is being taken. I mean, any of us in this room can say we love each other. Matter of fact, I met somebody today, and right before I walked off, I looked at him and I said, I love you. And I said, I know that seems weird because we just met. But the truth is we do love you, and we want to serve you today. How can we give to you? One of the things that I try to do when I have time before a service, and I didn't do this with everybody today, so please forgive me, is I try to ask, can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I get you a hot chocolate? There's two reasons. Number one, I want you to know we're hospitable. Number two, I want you to stay awake, all right? So the thing is how can I serve you? All right, just kidding. But the thing is like I want people to know, and this should be our objective, to know that they're noticed. Please write this down, and please never forget it. A lot of bad behavior comes from a neglected life. And not a neglected life in the fact that they're neglecting themselves, but a neglected life in their absent relationship that is meaningful. You take a child, or you take someone that is raised without parental love, and that child will have so many more challenges than the child that is raised, nurtured, and loved and embraced. Take the baby that's kissed and hugged. I watched a video on this. Wade's put me onto it on our Right Now Media, which, by the way, is a free resource that has tons of Bible studies. The church offers it to you. You pay nothing. All you give is your time, and watch God give you back grace, mercy, hope, and restoration. Anyway, little plug there. So I'm watching this, and I'm gathering it in, and it says you kiss this one baby, and you just feed this next baby. And those babies will grow up totally different. Because there is something that is born into every one of our nature, and it is a need to be accepted, a need to be embraced. By the way, church, I know we said it at the beginning. A lot of you have been coming for years. You know this. We somehow at Grace attract brokenness. And I love it. We attract it. We're advertised it. I've told you before, we're known as sometimes, and by the way, if you're a visitor here, I don't want to scare you off with this. I think it is actually the gospel being made known, so please dial into it. But we get that's the church where all the rejects go. Well, let's go, because that's what the cross is too. All right? That's what an empty grave is too. Well, that's the place that people go that have issues. Let's go. That's what Jesus is all about. Right? Here's the thing. I don't want you coming in here today and acting like you're perfect, because you're going to make me very uncomfortable, because I tried hard this week and still fell short of the glory of God. I strove for him and still found doubts in my faith, found weakness in my spirit, found depression in certain situations and scenarios. I sat down. Matter of fact, it was so needed in my life. Wednesday, I have this accountability partner that I meet with pretty regularly at a place where we can get one of the best omelets that you can find. And I'll tell you my spot later, all right? But it's over in Newport, all right? And so we meet there. Well, my brother-in-law got married Tuesday. We didn't get in bed till like 2 or 3 o'clock. And for the first time, I think, in my life, I didn't set an alarm. And I woke up at the time I was supposed to meet this person. And as I was supposed to meet this person at that time frame, my heart broke, because I'm going to say this, I desperately needed my session that day. You know, I know I'm a pastor and I'm supposed to stand here and say, this is what the Lord has said. But sometimes I think we need to understand that the Lord speaks best when the broken heart surrenders. The Lord speaks best when the overthinking mind listens. And in that, it's not that he's not speaking while my mind's overthinking, and it's not that he's not speaking while you're in your best part of life. It's that sometimes life gets so good and the blessings are so good that we fail to realize we have a need of him. And in those moments, we start relying on ourselves. How many of you have ever done this? Say me. All right, let's see a hand. All right, you know what I'm talking about. Look around the room. Get it up there. All right. How many of you have ever come to church and put on that happy face, and inside you were just hoping somebody would literally care about what was real on the inside? All right, here it is. If we're going to bring in people and attract people that are broken, we have to understand that the greatest need they have in their life is to be noticed and accepted right where they are. And this verse is God saying, I love you so much that I gave everything that matters to me to reach you, because you carry such a value to me. And some of us sit here and we say amen because we've received that grace and mercy. But maybe there's one that's sitting here saying, I need it. Maybe you've come in carrying battles. Maybe you have hurts that were created deep, wounds that have lasted for decades that you are again and again getting abused by. Maybe you carry PTSD, bitterness, wrath, anger, rage. Maybe you are the one that feels dirty and nasty. Maybe you're the one that feels like God's grace isn't strong enough to pull you out. That God's love doesn't go far enough to reach you. And the truth is, Jesus, looking at Nicodemus, broke down that lie. He said, God loves you. Nicodemus, God loves you so much. He gave his son for you. And all he asked for in return is faith. I don't know about you, but this hasn't been the week of my greatest faith. Right? Now, y'all get deathly quiet when I say that. So why don't we give a little bit of an invitation right here? Close your eyes. How many of you have had battles this week too? Did you slip your hand up in the air? Oh, wow. Did not expect that. Probably 90% of the floor. Can't see all the hands in the balcony, but there's many. I want you to look at me. I'm going to ask for your grace and mercy today, because I don't for a moment feel worthy to stand here and proclaim the gospel. And the only thing that gives me this opportunity is to know that God loves me. And he loves you too. I've had my heart broke this week in different areas, and real estate market's taking a turn. Right, Frida, where you at? Frida might need some therapy too. Things are slowing down. My wife and I made a decision 3 weeks ago to take a step of faith to meet the needs of Lincoln and our other 2 children and bring her home. And that was terrifying. right at the same time that our church decided to vote on building a building that's going to be able to house people, that helps jumpstart our recovery centers and our teenage ministries, our housing for the orphans that age out and just get kicked to the street. And God didn't wait until this worked out and that worked out. He just said, hey, can I just rock your world? Almost like the moment that he looks at Abraham and says, will you pack and take your family and your wealth and everything you have and move? Can you imagine that conversation? It would be cool if God says, hey, you're about to get a new home. How many of you'd say, yeah, I'd like that, right? That'd be good. But then all of a sudden you ask for the address and he says, we'll figure that out. Just follow me, and everywhere your sandal touches, I'll give you that land, but we're going to keep moving. And it's not that you're just going to move with just your wife and a little bitty amount of people. You're very wealthy. So you're going to have to bring all your cattle and all your servants, and you're just going to have to trust that every day when I wake you up and I say, this is where we're going, it's time to pack, that you pack again. And you're going to have to trust that even though you're an old man married to an old woman, I'm going to give you a child that's going to bring in the generation of believers, of Jews, that would usher in the Messiah. And I'm going to bless every single one of them, and they're going to be my chosen people, and they're going to be great, and they're going to be powerful. But today, I'm not giving you all the answers. Today, I'm just giving you a call. And I'm looking at you and I'm saying, Abraham, will you just believe me enough today to pack your bags and just follow me? And I don't know about you, but in my life sometimes, especially when things go like this and we make this decision and then we as a church say, hey, we're going to sacrifice all that we have to reach our community's needs. So instead of taking the 5 acres that we wanted to build a new auditorium on and building a building, we'll plant a physical garden. And instead of taking these buildings that we have and saying, look, this is what we're going to do, we'll offer them to the community for use. And we'll open the doors and we'll say, freely, anybody can use this. Freely, anybody can do whatever they need to do. And in there, instead of everything happening exactly the way we want it to happen, challenges face us. The market turns and now you look at your wife and you're like, okay, we did hear God for the last 8 years, right? You look at your elders and you say, hey, are we where we're supposed to be? Because I'll tell you this, it's easy when God is so clear to follow him, but it takes something different inside of us when God says, now follow me into the unknown where only I know what's going to happen and you are just going to have to wait on me. You're just going to have to lean on me. And I don't know about where you are today, but let me break something down. You may be the marriage that's saying, we're going to make this work, and you're in the middle of one of the worst things you've been through. And all of a sudden, you've made this decision that divorce is not an option, that you're not going to give up, you're not going to throw it away, that you're going to stick it out, that you're going to accept and embrace each other's weaknesses. Don't for a moment think that it gets easier from there. Know this, that it's going to cause you to have to believe in God when you can't believe in the other person. And if you're the person that's sitting here saying, I want freedom from my addiction, then I'm going to tell you this, and please stay with me here. Stop fighting the addiction. That's not your problem. It's the symptom of a problem. Hey, in your marriage, stop fighting the people. That's not your problem. Stop fighting the betrayal. That's not your problem. Stop fighting all the things that you've seen that have brought pain. Those are the results of your problems. The problem lies deep inside of the heart of each and every one of us. And it is this, that absent from a relationship with Christ, we are very broken. And we need to pause for a moment and say, like David prayed in Psalms, create a new heart, create a new spirit, create a new mindset, create a new earth. I told my wife this, and I've got some friends here today that I've met over the past year in real estate. And I no offense to y'all, there's about 10 or 15 of you here today. I don't know why you chose to show up on the same day, all right? No, we love that you're here. I told my wife please don't use this against me. After going to the elders this week and saying I'm battling some emotional problems, my heart is hurting and heavy. After going to my wife and saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden I get the calls, we'll see you this week. And I'm like, they're going to have to really see me. They're not going to get to see the good version of me. They're going to have to get to see the real. And texting Wade this morning and asking my wife last night and this morning to pray for me that I could just get a sermon out. I could just stand before you and preach anything. It is no accident that God has brought us to the only thing worth believing, and that is the fact that no matter where you are or what you're going through, God loves you and has a mad, incredible, supernatural plan for your life. God wants to do something that's extraordinary, and that is why he let his son die for you, so that we who are dead in our trespasses of sin can be raised to new life. I sat down with my accountability partner and I said, how can me, with the hurts of my life, and before it's judged or people say, well, he's got sin and all this, before you try to Job me like his friends did, understand this. This is the healthiest I've been in my spiritual walk when it comes to the actions of my life. But I'm going to tell you now, it's the most vulnerable in my spiritual life, because now my life is completely exposed to everybody. And all that can be seen, if there's anything to be seen, is what Christ can do with a broken person. And so in there, I look at that and I said, how am I supposed to preach when I'm sitting here battling depression over an issue in my life right now? Because I firmly believe this, and I want to tell you this, and I'll give you his answer. Satan wants you to believe that you have to have the answers to be used by God. And that you have to be in a point of your life that you've got it all together to be used by God. And I'll be honest with you, if you're waiting till your life is perfect to step out in faith and trust God, you'll never be used by God. Because there's always going to be something that's hurting in you, right? How many of you would say, you know what, marriage is fine, but man, my kids are going through something right now? Hey, how many of you would be honest, and you don't have to raise hands and say, you know what, life is good in this area, but this area over here, wow, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I read the article yesterday where gas prices have averaged out at $5 a gallon now across the nation, projected $6. And every time I see that, my heart breaks, because I know how hard some of you work. And how hard you give and how challenged you are right now, because groceries are outrageous and gas prices are really, really high. Our church has given out probably $500 in gas cards in the past, 2-3 weeks. We have groceries constantly rolling out. We see the need. And if we're not careful, we're going to stop in our society and Christians are going to panic. But can I tell you a couple things? Number one, the Bible said this was going to happen. Things are going to get harder and things are going to get more difficult. By the way, when things get harder in the world, rejoice. The drawing of Jesus, the coming of Jesus is getting closer. But here's the thing. Don't just stop and rejoice. Get busy, because people need to know he's coming. And Jesus makes a statement. Verse 16 is not our message today. It's the intro to verse 17 through the end of their thought. Look at what he says. He goes in and he says, God sent his son into the world. Say it with me, please. Not to, but to what? Oh, wow. If God didn't even send Jesus to judge, maybe you should stop. Right? If God didn't send his son to condemn, but that all through him might find everlasting life, an abundance of life. I mean, God didn't come just to pull you up and say, okay, I'm going to give you salvation, see you in heaven. No, he said, I'm going to give you salvation, then I'm going to walk with you and talk with you and feast with you and feed you and lead you and guide you and care for you and nurture you and be with you wherever you go. If you go back to the dark, I'm still going with you. If you're walking in the light, I'm still there with you. God did not just save you and drop you. He started a journey with you with Jesus. And I don't know about you, but I'm on a journey and I'm learning different things about myself every single day. Last night I was driving home and I don't know what happened. I turned onto Indian Warpath and I looked up, and above me were 5 birds flying, but chasing a crow. And I literally stopped. If you know anything about that area, you should never stop there. But it grabbed me in such a spiritual way that I pulled over in the neighbor's driveway and I sat there and watched those birds. Because what I saw is these 5 birds chasing a threat. And the threat had at some point, I wasn't there for the beginning of the fight, had some point invaded something that was of value to them. Maybe it was a territory, or maybe it was where their legs were, and I don't know. I can't go into it. I don't know bird theology, but I do know this, that these birds were not going to allow that predator into their home. And so instead of one chasing it, 5 got in formation. And I stood there with my camera on the side of the road trying to get a picture of these birds. Because in my heart, I heard God say, there's an enemy coming for each and every one of you. There's an enemy coming for your family and for mine. There's an enemy coming for Grace Community Church and for Piedmont Baptist and for the churches down the road. And instead of us sitting there and trying to fight this enemy individually, there's something that could happen if people would come together. And instead of us trying to fend off the enemy, we chased him out. And we said, you're not going to get, not just my family, you're not getting DJ's either. You're not getting Derek's. You're not getting anybody's, because if you try to come after them, you're going to deal with us. I've told this story again and again. On a mission trip in Jamaica, I remember walking. It was an 8 Mile Rock area of Jamaica that literally we had to have people with us, because as much as we like to commercialize Jamaica, it's a very dangerous and poor part of that place. So we took a team down there, and we were walking up a road. The very first day of evangelism, we were going to have a service in the street that night. So we were going to go invite everybody on that road. And I remember going to take one corner, and a Jamaican grabbed me and said, "You will not go there. It's dangerous. You will die there. Come with me." And so my first encounter is, I'm in Jamaica and I might die. I mean, that's literally what's going through my mind. So we start walking up the road, and we come to this lady, Iris White. That was her name, her house. We were looking at it, and here she came walking out, old lady, probably in her mid to late 80s. She got to the fence where we were standing, and she started praising God. And I was like, "So you're a believer?" "Oh, yes." And for 20 minutes, she just poured out God. And I asked her, I said, "Ma'am, you live in a place where there's drive-by shootings and people killed all the time. Aren't you scared?" She lives alone. She said, "No." She said, "When the gunmen show up, I tell them, if you're going to shoot me, you got to shoot through Jesus first." And she said, "And every time I've told them, they leave." And I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's a pretty good way to live, isn't it? If you're going to come at me, you got to go through Jesus first. Find in the Bible where the enemy went after Jesus and Jesus loses. And the truth is, I'll tell you, find where the enemy went after people, and you'll find a lot of loss. But you find where they went after our champion. You find where they went after our Savior. You find where they went after our Lord. And you will not find not one retreat, not one moment that Jesus said, "We're not going to do this." Not one moment where he backed down. Not one moment where he said, "Hey, I wish I had better people," or "I wish I had better resources," or "I wish I had better circumstances." No matter where the demons showed up, Jesus had the authority over them. And he looks at Peter one day and he says, "On this rock, I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." How many of you have heard the verse? Then tell me, church, why are there so many defeated believers in our world today? If this is the church that God was talking about, then why is Satan running rampant and the Christians in fear when it should be reversed? The gates of hell cannot prevail against who? His church. Now, I'm a believer. Are you? I'm kind of proud to be one. I was sitting with my accountability partner this week, and I was like, I'm really convicted about something, because I'll stand in front of a church and say, "I'll die for you." Like, I'll die for my faith. How many of you said that too, right? I would die for my faith today. Some of you have been in military. You literally believed it. You would die for our freedom. And for that, we should say thank you, by the way. We need to restore that back in America, to realize that it is through great sacrifice we have the country we have today. And it's also through great sacrifice we have the salvation we have today. And both should be honored, right? But in there, I told him my conviction comes from the fact that I say I would die for Jesus, but every time I get attacked by someone who says they're a believer, I want to quit. So why is it that I would say that I would die for the cause of Christ, but quit when a believer says something negative about me? It makes me realize that what I'm saying about what I would do for Jesus is not true if I would so easily surrender at the opinion of you or others. I don't know about you, but it brought me to this study in my life to where I say, you know what, God, I want to know what it takes to build from the inside out instead of trying to build from the outside in. And I don't know if you're like me, and I don't know why God has me up here so vulnerable right now. I am sweating bullets, and I feel like my heart's racing. I'm burning more calories right now. I mean, I could eat Oreos and probably burn them off, all right? I'm there. But I feel like God has called me to be honest with you today. You say, well, what about all the time? Absolutely all the time. But in this moment, I think it's very important that we say, we've got to stop building our lives on what other people think and what other people say, what the magazine said your family should look like, or what they said your body should look like. I spent my entire life seeking the approval of others. Is there any Me Too's in the place today? I told my wife the other day I have this problem where if an elderly man walks into my life and gives me advice or wants to walk with me, I immediately make him a father figure. Anybody else do that? And if that person gets disappointed in me, if I'm not careful, guess what I'll do? I'll break down. And I hear God in the background saying, I am your father, not a figure. I am him. And I love you deeply. And I'm affirming you every single day. By the way, I fail to miss the affirmations from God when I fail to pick up his word. Can I just say that? I fail to hear the affirmations of God when I'm sidetracked by the need of others. And in my life, the greatest falls I've ever had have come from a desperate need to have approval. And Jesus is looking at Nicodemus and he is simply saying here, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to save you. The Bible says he didn't come to judge the world, but he came to seek and to save the lost. The one thing I see the church doing is we want the lost, but we don't want to seek them. You know what seek means? I'm looking for you. Why do you think at the beginning of a service we say, turn around and meet somebody? Why did it make my day that you walked up and gave me a hug this morning and I don't even know who you are? Why does it make my heart just beat out of my chest when I see people giving to each other? Because that is the heartbeat of what Jesus was when he was on this earth. And every time we feed the hungry, and every time we care for the poor, and every time we look at someone who has hurt us and say, I will not condemn you, but instead I will forgive you so that you can stand back up and you can be what God created you to be again. We display the gospel. And look at what it says. It says in verse number 18, there is no judgment against anyone who believes in him. But anyone who does not believe in him has already been judged for not believing in God's one and only Son. And the judgment is based on this fact. Y'all ready? A couple more verses, we're out. God's light came into the world, but people loved darkness more than light, for their actions were evil. And all who do evil hate the light and refuse to go near it for fear their sin will be exposed. Can I time out right here? I've been in church since I was a little boy, and I've heard this message preached a ton of times saying that if somebody has sinned, then they are evil according to this verse. But I tell you, stop and read it again. It is not a condemning verse. Here's what the Bible says. You are living in a rejection of Christ to stay living in your sin. It is not because you've messed up once. It's not because you had a failure. It's not because you've been out of church or been away from believers. It's not because you've done this. It's saying, hey, those that love the darkness, in other words, they want to stay there and they never want to come to Jesus. Those are the ones that are walking in condemnation, not because God has condemned them, but they've chosen condemnation in darkness rather than choosing the salvation and the new life that Christ offers in the light. And so when we read that verse, I've heard that verse used to keep people pinned down. So I want to make some proclamations right here. And I want to make them boldly, and I want to make them loudly, and I want you to hear them. There's a lot of opinion in our churches on who can serve the Lord, but those opinions cannot be found in God's word. And there's a lot of people that say, if you've done this or you've done this, then you can't do this. And that does not come from God. I will tell you right now, you may be in total darkness, but there is not a God in heaven trying to point out the darkness in your life. There's a God in heaven trying to tell you there's a light, there's a light, there's a hope, there's a new life, there's a new you, there's a new chance, a new opportunity. He's not just the God of second chances. He's the God of unlimited chances. And he wants to rescue all people, not just certain ones. So I wrote down 3 things about the light that I want you to get. Number 1, there's freedom in it. Isn't that what it says in the very next verse? All who do evil hate the light and refuse to go near it for fear their sins would be exposed. But those who do what is right, understand, all of us have had to do this, come to the light. I understand, you weren't born in the light. We were born in darkness. In other words, let me put it this way. Let me break that down. Those are spiritual terms. Let's put them in logical terms. Ready? You were born in sin. You were a sinner. You've always been a sinner, and you always will be a sinner until you get to heaven. You were born that way. The difference in those in darkness and those in light is at some point those that were in darkness left the darkness to come to the light. How many of you understand this? All right, and so here it is. God is not asking for you to give a resume of your goodness. And God is not asking for you to give a top 10 of the best things you've ever done in your life before he'll accept you. God is simply saying this, forsake that and get to that. Leave that and go to this. Can I do a visual for you real quick? Are you okay? Y'all still with me? All right. DJ, will you come up here? I'm going to take you. Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, come on up. DJ's on our security team. Normally, I'm not supposed to use him, but I'm safest when security's standing by me, right? So come on up, DJ. All right. Let me get somebody else. I hate to. Chris, come on. Come on up. DJ, can you be darkness? All right, there you go. I know. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Chris, you be light. Yeah, that's it. We're breaking up. I firmany believe this, and I want you to understand, a lot of times we're in this mindset where we think that Satan has a control of us. How many of you ever asked your kids, remember this statement? Why did you do that? Well, Satan made me do it. Anybody ever said that in their life? Oh, I did a lot when I was a kid. Why'd you do that? Because my parents, my dad was a pastor, so it's like, Satan made me do that, Daddy. I couldn't do such a thing, right? But according to the gospel in Colossians, he canceled the record of wrongs against you. He publicly shamed them by nailing them to the cross. He stripped the enemy of its power and removed its dominion. And I want you to get this. Satan doesn't have a hold of you. You got a hold of him. And if I live like this, I'm not recognizing the problem I have. And the problem I have is I need to realize that at any moment, I control this relationship. By the way, those of you that are dating in an abusive relationship, I want you to get this, understand this. That abuse will make you feel like if you give more, the abuse will go less. It's positioned to do that. But if you give more to abuse, guess what you get more? More abuse. I was raised in it. I know it. I've lived it, seen it. And at some point, it can't be about, can we get along with the abuse? At some point, you got to say, I'm worth more than being abused today. So I have found this to be true in our lives, is a lot of times we've spent time here. And I'm not going to ask you how many of you spent time here. But I have found this to be true in my life. I didn't spend time here alone. In my alcoholism days, I had drinking buddies. Any other addicts in here know what I'm talking about today? Come on now, say yep.
Yep.
All right, so who wants to be my buddy? Tim, come be my buddy.
All right.
David, come be my buddy. Let's get some females up here too. No, everybody looked away. This whole section looked away. Rachel, come be my buddy. All right, everybody, let's grab hold of what we're in. And you know what I've found is sometimes you get so deep in here that even if you try to break free, you've so depended on this that you're still bound by what they say. You're still, well, one drink won't hurt. And by the way, been in recovery ministry long enough to know this, that if you were a drug addict, don't you dare for a moment think that alcohol is not the same thing in your life. Right. And I've heard people say, I'm not preaching against it. What I'm saying is this, listen, the Bible doesn't say that drinking is terrible, but I will say this. If you have been addicted to drugs, you need nothing that'll step you back in that direction. If you've been addicted to pornography, you may not need cable. Are we right? You say, well, they don't show it on TV. You don't need them to show it. You've got it on replay right here. I heard a man teaching our youth this Wednesday, and he said to them, guys, some images that I saw when I was younger are still in the arsenal of my memory. And you don't have to be sitting in front of it. You just need it triggered. Men, you know what I'm talking about. Women, I can't speak for you. Never been a woman. Can't speak for the way you process. But the truth is this. If I am going to break up with darkness, sometimes I've got to break up with the community that has kept me there. And I'm not saying you should be like, I'm better than you, see you. No matter of fact, you should try to take them with you. Would you agree? But I have found this to be true. If you try to keep in touch with what kept you bound, even if you're trying, hold on to me, you're trying to get away, you're going to have something that's constantly pulling you back. We literally have brought somebody to live in our sanctuary, in our church. There are residents here. And if you know who they are, one of the best people you'll ever meet. But when they came in, they wanted a specific type of help. And so we've been helping that. And then all of a sudden at work, somebody started saying, you know, you should really get away from those people and just give in to your lifestyle because that's who you were made to be. And so you know what our next advice is? How much do you need for your bills? What do you need this? Because it's time for you to quit your job. And as a church, we're going to take you on so that you're not staying in a place that every day is trying to take you back to what God has set you free from. And sometimes I have learned this, that I am so rooted in my hurt that while there is light, I need help to get there. Anybody in here say, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus Christ, I believe in salvation, I believe that there is freedom and forgiveness of sins? Would you slip your hand up? How many of you say, amen, I believe in that, right? You got it? All right, good. Now let's answer this too. How many of you that just raised your hand still have anxious days, still battle depression sometimes, still have insecurity, still at times feel like you're unworthy? Would you raise your hand too? But we're believers, right? Yes. Does it make us less of a believer? No. It just simply means this. I all day long cannot be the only believer in my life. I need other believers in life with me. I need a community to walk with me. I need people. And thank God, I'll say this to you. The elders in this church have been those people for me and my wife. Amen, Jordan? I need people that are saying, okay, Wade he has bugged the snot out of me all week. You know why? Because I told him I was hurting. And instead of sitting back and letting me hurt and hoping and praying that I get some miraculous moment with God, he has sent thing after thing. He has sent memes and little, what do they call those, GIFs or whatever they are, of weird things just to make me laugh. He is, are you okay? He sent me pictures of his roof and said, you would enjoy it up here. It's flat. He knows I'm terrified of heights. And it was a recruiting thing because he needs help with his roof, right? But the thing is what happened is this, and Wade, I want you to come do this for me, and I know we haven't scripted this, stay with me. Wade, would you come up, and would you physically put hands on my body and do what you've been trying to do for me this week? I have been in a place where Satan is telling me I'm worthless. I know I'm not the only one in the church today. I have been in a place where Satan is haunting me and beating me up with shame and guilt for some of the stupid things that I've done in my life. I know I'm not the only one in the place. You know what? I feel like Satan sometimes has used people to try to pull me back when we actually need people that'll say, no, we're going this way. And I'll be honest with you, if Satan has a hold of you, I'm not saying you're Satan, but if Satan has a hold of you, the closer you get here, eventually he's going to say, I'm done with you because I can't deal with this. I'm done with you. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to want to leave here and go back. It's good to have a community. And when I saw those 5 birds flying, I thought of Joe and Howard and Garrett and Chris and Wade, our 5 elders. And it was as if the Holy Spirit told me, the enemy's coming. But God has given you community to chase it away. I'm telling you, church, if we're going to build a church that loves people, you can stop holding my hand. If you're going to build a church that loves people, if we're going to do that, we got to go back to John 3:16. For God so loved that he couldn't sit still. For God so loved that he couldn't sit idly by and watch sin do to his creation what it was doing. That God, knowing that Adam and Eve had ate of a fruit and were hidden, still showed up at the garden. Knowing that they were sinful, knowing that his creation was now flawed, knowing that they had disrespected him and God against them, he not only showed up, he went to the bush of where they were hiding, and he did not wait for them to call on the name of the Lord. He called their name first. Adam, where are you? And you may be sitting here today, and I am the worst at saying, God, give me a sign. Anybody else like that? Give me an answer. When all truth is this, every day of your life has been a sign of his love. Every moment that you've survived beyond your sin is a sign of his grace and presence in you. Every moment that you have been able to go back to that job or stay married to that person, every time you've been able to stand back up after everybody's been trying to knock you down because of where you've been, every single moment that you've existed past your first sin screams that God loves you. Because he had promised that if you eat of that tree, you will die. But did they? Eventually. But not right there. You know when they died? Hundreds of years after he clothed them. Hundreds of years after he said, if I leave them in the garden, they'll stay like this. And I refuse to let them stay like this. Go read it in Genesis. So he removed them from the garden, not as punishment, but protection. So that even death, stay with me, that was designed to be so terrible would become a gift to the believer that ends this mess and begins our eternal glory with Christ. Death is swallowed up in victory. Oh, death, where is your sting? Oh, grave, where is your victory? Because your little boy today is standing in the presence of God, not realizing what has been lost, but experiencing what has been gained, because death to the believer is the entrance into God's original plan for each and every one of our lives, to live with him in his perfection. How many of you are following the sermon today? Are you with me? And he says, hey, listen. You were dead, but you don't have to be. And I firmly believe that the church should care about them. That we shouldn't come in here and say, oh, we love Jesus, and act like that's all that matters. Because the truth, yes, I want you to love Jesus. I want you to grow in Jesus. I want you to develop in Jesus. But it should pierce the heart of every person here that they still exist. That they don't know him. That if Jesus were to return or the world were to end, where would they go? Where is their hope? What truth do they have other than the condemnation of sin's results. And by the way, can we just do this? We started with, in the beginning of every problem is some type of a neglect or some type of a need for attachment or a need for this. And we find that is exactly what hell is eternal separation from relationship. Eternal separation from God. We say it's a place of fire. Hey, you know what? That's terrible. But to live in an existence where there is no hope and you never have an opportunity to be rescued or saved, to live in an existence where you'll never be hugged again. You'll never be told, I love you. You'll never have anybody show up and ease an ounce of your pain. You'll never have anybody to talk to. You'll never have anybody that listens. That is hell. And some of us are living in a hell on earth because we feel so isolated. And God is saying this, we sing it in a hymn, rescue the perishing, care for the dying, Jesus is calling. If we're going to be a church that makes a difference, then yes, notice them and love them. But our main notice needs to be them. And Jude says it this way, plucking them as brands from the burning, so that their garments wouldn't even be spotted with the scent of smoke, saying, you had your chance. But God, through Jesus, gave them this chance. And in his name, we'll protect this. In his name, we'll be there for you on your bad day. In his name, we'll keep your secret. But I'll be honest with you, you need to stop keeping it. Because the light brings freedom. I will say this, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to what? Forgive our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Church, listen to me. The longer you hold that sin, the longer Satan gets to blackmail you. Because when you expose it and you confess it, he has nothing else he can use against you. He loves your secrets so that he can keep you bound by shame and guilt. But when you and I get to a place where we say, I am tired of feeling this way, I would rather stand in a total exposure to man than to stand in hiding and brokenness and shame. Your life will radically change. Because I'll be honest with you, you're going to stand before God one day, and what they would have said and done to you is not going to matter. There are so many believers today that are not walking in the fulfilled calling because they're so scared of what people would think if they actually became real. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I would much rather be concerned with what he thinks than what they think. Because they can't save your life. And they can't provide all your needs. They can't meet you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. They can't do it. But he can. So let them hate you. He never will. Let them ridicule you. He'll accept you. Let them reject you. He'll claim you. You say, if I tell my wife the truth, she'll leave. I am living proof today that if your life loves Jesus, that may not be what happens. Because as you expose, he begins to heal. And Satan starts looking around at, well, what can I accuse you of? Well, you can't tell my secrets. If I've already brought them to the light, there's freedom. There's power. When I confess my sins to the church, and my in-laws are sitting here, you know how hard it is to talk about this? When I confessed my sins to my wife and to the church, we went through one of the hardest seasons of our lives. Even to this day, years later, we're experiencing ridicule based on those things. And you know what? To sin, there is consequence. Would you agree? If you don't agree with that, punch somebody in the face real quick. See what happens. Either they pounce you or security will, right? And you say, well, I don't want the consequences. You're going to get the consequences, but here's the thing. Write it down. You may get the consequences for your sin, but through Jesus' name, you'll never get the judgment. You'll never get the condemnation. And every time, I remember going to a wedding, I think it was Ashley and Richie's wedding. So scared to go to that wedding, sitting down at that wedding, and a lady sitting at the other end of the table slid us a Bible. And it was Romans, where it said, the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. She looked at us and said, God's not done with you. I was done. But isn't it amazing that sometimes at your quit is where God's just getting started? Sometimes at your broken is where the miracles are just about to happen. At your dead end, the breakthrough is right around the corner. And when you say, I can't go anymore, that might be the best statement you've ever made in your life. Because maybe you are getting to the point where you realize, absent him, you can't take another step. But because of him, there is no limits to where you can go. There's power in the light. David wrote it in Psalm when he was confessing, against you and you only have I sinned and done this evil in your sight. Talking about a moment with Bathsheba, followed by the murder of people to cover it up. And in that passage, he asked God to renew the joy of his salvation. Restore to me that joy, he said. Renew your spirit within me. And then he made this statement, so that I can go lead the rebels. So that I can go and set them free. You say, they know this about me and I can't be used. And I said at the very beginning of the service, let your ministry start where your greatest failure, you found the rescue of God. Start right there. What you needed in your life, what you did in your life, what you learned in your life could be the greatest ministry of your life as God uses those moments to set other people free. Today, you got to understand that when you come to the light, sure, you're going to be exposed. And sure, people are going to see. But what they get a chance to see is the power of God and what he can do in the life of the broken. He can build boats. He can make generations. He can do all kinds of things, build kingdoms. You read the Bible, you'll find a bunch of broken men, a bunch of broken women that God used to do the greatest works that have ever been done on this planet. You say, if I go there, they'll know. Here's the thing. He already knows. So get there. Because he's already dealt with it. And last, there's victory in it. Thank you, brother. I'm going to give you this and we're going to go. When I was younger, we were on my grandmother and grandfather's farm in Kentucky. Back then, I loved the outdoors. Mainly because I was dumb and didn't realize snakes were everywhere. I didn't understand that ticks carried diseases that made you allergic to red meat. Can you imagine? We used to play hide and seek in the dark on this. I was little, so to me it was like 100 acres. It was probably 5, but it was this huge land, and we would lay in ditches, and we would hide behind wood and crawl under cars. And now I realize that I've grown up. It was so dumb. So many ways to get hurt. Isn't it amazing that you learn about fear? You don't start with it. But anyway. I remember one day we were sitting on the porch and it's Kentucky, right? So there was a corral, I guess that's what you call it, where they race horses. Am I saying that right? Anybody know? Okay, you don't know, so just stay with me. All right, so there was this thing that you race horses. My grandpa was very, very legalistic. And so you did not go to the racetrack. Now, there's nothing wrong with going to the racetrack. But you did not go. So we would always sit up there with binoculars and watch these things race. And they'd always do it at night. So it was not, you could see because they'd have lights around the ring. So I was sitting up there and I was watching. And I was sitting with my brother and a cousin. And as I was watching the light, I noticed that there was a silhouette that was coming through my binoculars, and I took it down, pulled it back up, took it down. And coming up the driveway was a drunk man screaming that he had murdered somebody in the creek. Now, I have not always been as brave as I am today. And those of you that know me know that I'm not brave at all. I try to pretend like when we're showing property and we're walking by the creek, the whole time I'm thinking, there's a snake here. There's a snake here. There's got to be. But I try to act like, oh, this is a nice place. It's beautiful. It's like, there's a snake somewhere. He's coming and he's like, where's the preacher? I just murdered a woman. Literally screaming it. I'm 12 years old. I'm trying to open the door and my hands are shaking. I can't get in. I remember ripping it open and diving in the door, slamming it. leaving my brother and cousin outside. It's like we care about people until we have our own needs, right? And they're like, what is going on? I was like, there's a murderer on the front porch. He knocks on the door, Pastor, I need you to come down to the creek. I've killed somebody. Will you walk me home? And my grandpa's like, let's go. Wait, how dumb is this? Like, this man's admitting, Brady, you've been in police force. He's admitting something he just did, and he's asking you to go on a walk. That's not like, hey, let's do this. So they go, and of course, the guy hadn't killed somebody. He was just drunk. My grandpa knew him, but my grandpa loved him. So my grandpa walked him home. I tell you that story to say this. Never again did I go outside in the dark without an adult holding my hand. Never at my grandpa's farm. I was terrified from that moment. A frog would croak and I would have a heart attack. It was, a bee would buzz by and I was done. I was permanently scarred from that moment. Maybe part of my issues today, I don't know. But I'll never forget seeing in that darkness, that silhouette coming. And in my heart knowing something's not right here. See, church, I'm going to tell you this. If we live in the dark, it's hard to see the enemy coming. If there is no source of light, he'll hit you out of nowhere. He'll blindside you. We get marriages that tell us all the time, I thought we were doing better, but then. We get addicts that tell us all the time, I was doing great, but out of nowhere, something came. And it's because we have no source of comfort in darkness. There's no source of illumination. And God said, let us be in the light as he is in the light. I'm going to tell you this right now. The light illuminates the enemy. There are areas of my life now that have become so much stronger because I know just how vulnerable I am to the enemy's attacks. How many of you have ever had a financial bad decision? Anybody raise your hand? How many of you now can recognize when a bad decision is about to be made? How many of you were impulsive when you first got a credit card? Okay, that hit a nerve. All right, but how many of you now don't need every TV in Walmart? You don't need every DVD that comes out. You don't have to go 5 nights a week for entertainment. Why? Because you were brought into the light and now you can see the areas that it used to in your life you were not exposed to. And I'm telling you, church, not only do we need to get to the light because there's victory here, because we can see the enemy and we can identify them. Pearl Harbor would have never happened had they hit the alarm when they saw the enemy. But because the enemy looked like them on the radar, they bypassed. And I'm going to tell you this right now, Satan is not a red figure running around with a pitchfork and a pointed tail. He is what I would believe a shapeshifter. He wants to appear like God. He is an imitator. That's why he shows up to Eve with a promise that he could not fulfill. You'll be like God. That's why he shows up to Judas with a temptation to betray. But he doesn't tell Judas the whole story. He says, betray. And Judas said, had I known you were going to kill him, I would have never done it. Why? Because Satan loves to appear like a good idea. But he doesn't tell you the whole story. But when we are walking in the light, you can say, something's not right with that. Something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't look right. Something doesn't seem right. That looks like a godly person, but maybe they're not. That sounds like a godly person, but that doesn't line up with Scripture. That seems like a good idea, but it doesn't line up with the Word of God. So when the world says, hey, you know what? Your children should be able to have the choices in your life. You need to step back and realize how dumb you were when you were a kid. Not saying kids were dumb, but I was dumb as a kid. Any other teenagers in here make poor decisions? You're adults now, right? How many of you done it? Teenagers, how many of you made poor decisions? Never, Jeremiah? Never? Except for lying on the front row of church. Okay? The truth is this. When I realize there's a weakness in my life and I bring it to the light, we can protect it. We can say, hey, not there. It's not going to happen. You know what, one thing that I found, and maybe you saw this today, they won't let me be alone at church. Have y'all noticed that? I went and shook hands in the balcony, and Chris stalked me the whole way. I go outside, and security. The other day, I came walking around the corner of the building, and Tim just stopped and death stared at me and said, "Where'd you come from?" I was like, "I was doing a prayer walk around the building before service." And it was like, "You're not allowed to do that." It's like, my bad. I thought I was 38. But you know what he's saying is, I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to watch out for you. Surely his goodness and mercy, they're on the watch for you today. That's what David said. They'll follow me all the days of my life. Surely his goodness and mercy will follow me. You know what God's trying to do today? He's trying to build a community around you that when you can't see it coming, they see it coming for you. And you know what I believe? Is if you're walking in the light, you should become that community for those that are in darkness. To where we say, hey, you know, buddy, and I know you represent darkness, but right now you represent DJ. We'll say, hey, man, you work too much. You got up from a chair that has 2 cell phones in it. Mm-hmm. Probably have one in your pocket too, right? Mm-hmm. Let me see it.
I actually put it in my backpack.
Oh, you put it in your backpack before church?
Yeah, first time ever.
First time ever.
Yeah.
Would y'all agree with me? That sometimes the people that are in our ministries minister too much. And sometimes that woman needs you more than we do. Mm-hmm. That's his wife, by the way. Sometimes we need to look at each other and we need to say, you're not yourself today. Because when I know you and I actually care about you, I recognize you when you're not yourself. How many of you parents can recognize when your kid comes to the table and they're not who they normally are? And a good family can recognize when the family's off, right? Your husband comes home and he's not his normal self. Your wife comes home and she's not. That's where the questions need to be asked. What's going on? Because we're going to make sure that if the crow's flying in your direction, we're going to chase it out. Because maybe today's the day you don't have the strength to fly, but we'll fly for you. Maybe today's the day that you don't have the strength to stand. We'll stand for you. And that's why God said, I love you so much that I know you'll never be right enough. So I'm going to make this right. God so loved that he gave. He loved that he gave his one and only begotten Son so that whosoever believes in him will never perish, but have everlasting life. How many of you are thankful for that in your life? Would you say, thank you, Jesus?
Amen. Jesus.
Amen. But let's go find somebody who needs to know it in theirs. We're going to close today with communion. And we do communion a little bit different here. We don't give some pomp and circumstance to people to come serve you. You know, I've been in there where we pass it, and that's not a bad thing. But we just make it an invitation for you. It's not something we require of you, and it's not something that we point out. But today, I firmly believe that maybe some of you need to hear that you can get back up because Jesus laid down his life so that you could raise back in yours. Maybe some of you need to, maybe for the first time, do what Jesus said to do. Believe, just believe. It's not about what you can bring. Matter of fact, can I give you a little mini sermon right at the end? God did not wait to send the dove down to land on Jesus' shoulders till after he got off the cross. He told the world he was pleased with his Son before his Son ever did the work. Man, maybe if we were parents like that, we wouldn't be so performance-based in how we believe in Jesus, right? We would be saying, hey, God's pleased with you. Now go do the work. I love you. Now go do it. I had a wife tell me on the phone, I nag him so much, and he still won't do it because nagging doesn't work. Brag on him a little bit, and that man will rip off his glasses and show you his Superman cape and do anything he can possibly do for you. You tell him, we call it the feel his muscles. You are the best man in the world. You're the best woman in the world, and they will become a superhero for you. Are you with me? You know what God said? You're so valuable, I'll die for you. You know why he did that? So that you could live. We love him because he first church what?
Loved us.
So I'm going to invite you to communion today.